For 2 years, a mother and daughter survived alone. The town called them cursed. One cowboy called them family. Subscribe to Wild Sky Stories' new emotional tales every day. The wind howled across the open plains of Silver Creek, carrying whispers of winter on its breath. Elijah Harding pulled his worn leather coat tighter around his shoulders and squinted through the fading afternoon light. His horse, a sturdy buckskin mare named Ginger, had thrown a shoe 3 miles back, and now she was limping something fierce. He had been riding for the better part of 2 weeks, moving cattle from one ranch to another, earning his wages the honest way. At 32 years old, Elijah had spent most of his life in the saddle. He knew these territories well, or at least he thought he did. But this particular stretch of land seemed unfamiliar, wild, and untouched by civilization. That was when he saw it through the cluster of pine trees. A small cabin sat nestled against the base of a rocky hillside, smoke curling from its chimney like a gray ribbon reaching toward heaven. Relief washed over him. Where there was smoke, there was warmth, and perhaps a kind soul willing to help a stranded cowboy and his injured horse. As he approached, leading Ginger by her reins, something felt strange. The path to the cabin was overgrown, as if no one had traveled it in months, maybe years. Yet the smoke from the chimney proved someone lived there. Elijah tied Ginger to a fence post and walked toward the front door. Before he could knock, it swung open just a crack, and he found himself staring into a pair of frightened brown eyes. A woman stood there, her face pale, her auburn hair pulled back in a simple braid. She was perhaps 30 years of age, with fine features that spoke of a hard life carried with grace. Behind her, barely visible in the shadows, a small girl clung to her mother's worn dress. The woman held a broom in her hands like a weapon, though her arms trembled. Elijah removed his hat and held it against his chest. He wanted her to see his face, to know he meant no harm. "Ma'am, I apologize for the intrusion. My name is Elijah Harding. My horse threw a shoe a few miles back and she is injured. I was hoping someone here might help or at least allow me to rest her before continuing on." The woman did not lower the broom. Her eyes scanned him from head to toe, searching for danger. "People do not come here," she said quietly, her voice carrying a musical quality despite its cautious tone. "They say this cabin is cursed. They say a tragedy lives within these walls." Elijah tilted his head. "Ma'am, I do not believe in curses. I believe in kindness, hard work, and the good Lord above. If you are in need, I would be honored to help. If you wish me to leave, I will respect your wishes." For a long moment, silence stretched between them. Then the little girl peered around her mother's skirt, her eyes wide with curiosity rather than fear. "Mama, he has a horse," the child whispered. "A real horse." Something in the woman's expression softened. She lowered the broom and stepped aside. "My name is Rosemary Wells. This is my daughter, Lily." "You may come inside, Mr. Harding, but I warn you, there is truth to what people say about this place. Tragedy did visit us here. My husband passed away 2 winters ago. Folks in town decided we were cursed after that. They stopped coming. They stopped helping. They left us alone to survive." Elijah felt his heart clench at her words. He stepped inside the cabin and immediately noticed how sparse it was. The furniture was simple but clean. A fire crackled in the stone hearth, providing the only warmth. On a small table sat a loaf of bread that looked like it had been stretched thin over many days. Little Lily tugged at her mother's hand. "Can I pet the horse, Mama? Please?" Rosemary looked to Elijah, a question in her eyes. "Ginger is gentle as a summer breeze," he assured her, "but she is hurting right now. Perhaps after I tend to her leg, Miss Lily can give her a carrot or an apple if you have one to spare." Lily's face fell. "We do not have apples, mister. We do not have much of anything." The words hit Elijah harder than any fist ever had. He looked at Rosemary and saw the embarrassment flooding her cheeks. "We manage," she said quickly. We do not need charity. Elijah nodded slowly. I understand, ma'am. Pride is a valuable thing, but so is accepting help when it is offered with a sincere heart. I have supplies in my saddlebags. Coffee, dried meat, some biscuits. I would be grateful if you would share a meal with me tonight. It gets lonely eating alone on the trail. Rosemary studied him for a long moment, as if trying to determine whether he was real or some dream that would disappear come morning. Finally, she nodded. That evening they sat around the small table as the fire painted dancing shadows on the walls. Lily chattered excitedly about the books her mother had been teaching her to read, about the wild rabbits that sometimes came near the cabin, about the stars she liked to count on clear nights. Elijah listened to every word as if it were the most important story he had ever heard. And perhaps it was. There was something precious about this child's innocence, something sacred about the way Rosemary watched her daughter with fierce protective love. After Lily had fallen asleep on a small cot near the fire, Rosemary poured Elijah a cup of coffee and sat across from him. You should leave in the morning, she said quietly. People will talk if they learn you came here. Elijah wrapped his hands around the warm cup. Let them talk. I have never been one to live my life according to the opinions of others. You do not understand. My husband, Thomas, he was a good man, a hard worker. But he was also different. He believed in giving everyone a fair chance, regardless of their past. He hired workers that others would not touch. Former prisoners trying to rebuild their lives. Men and women society had discarded. The town hated him for it. She paused, her eyes glistening in the firelight. When he died from the fever, people said it was punishment. They said God had struck him down for his sins. They stopped trading with us. They refused to sell us supplies. We have been surviving on what we can grow and hunt ever since. Elijah set down his cup and leaned forward. Rosemary, your husband sounds like one of the finest men who ever lived. Anyone who punishes a widow and child for the kindness of their kin is no Christian in my book. They are cowards, plain and simple. Tears spilled down Rosemary's cheeks, and she quickly wiped them away. You are the first person to say that in 2 years, Mr. Harding. Call me Elijah, he said gently, and I mean every word. The next morning, Elijah told himself he should leave. He had a job waiting for him at a ranch, 2 days' ride south. He had responsibilities, obligations, a life that did not include a lonely widow and her daughter in a cabin that the world had forgotten. But when he stepped outside and saw little Lily trying to carry firewood twice her size, something inside him shifted. He walked over and gently took the logs from her small arms. Allow me, Miss Lily. A gentleman always helps a lady with heavy loads. Lily beamed up at him. Are you a real cowboy, Mr. Elijah? I reckon I am. Then you must be very brave. Mama says cowboys ride through danger without fear. Elijah knelt down to meet her eyes. Can I tell you a secret, Miss Lily? Cowboys get scared all the time. The difference is we do not let fear stop us from doing what is right. Lily nodded solemnly, as if he had shared the wisdom of the ages. He stayed that day to fix a broken fence post. He stayed the next day to repair a leak in the roof that had been dripping onto Rosemary's bed. He stayed the day after that to chop enough firewood to last through the coming winter. A week passed. Then 2. Each morning Elijah told himself he would leave. Each evening he found another reason to stay. The truth was he had stopped looking for reasons. This cabin, this woman, this child, they had become his reason. Rosemary noticed the change in him. She noticed how his eyes lingered on her face when she laughed at something Lily said. She noticed how his hands trembled slightly. What? He passed her a plate at supper. She noticed how he looked at her as if she were the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. And she noticed how her own heart had begun to race whenever he was near. One evening, after Lily had fallen asleep, Rosemary found Elijah sitting on the porch, staring up at the stars. May I join you? She asked. He shifted to make room for her on the wooden step, and she sat beside him. close enough that their shoulders almost touched. "I should have left weeks ago," he said quietly. "Why did you not?" He turned to look at her, his dark eyes reflecting the moonlight. "Because leaving you would be like leaving the only home I have ever truly found. And that terrifies me more than any danger I have ever faced." Rosemary felt her breath catch in her throat. "Elijah, I am a widow with a child and a cursed reputation. I have nothing to offer you except trouble." He reached over and gently took her hand in his. His fingers were rough from years of work, but his touch was tender. "You have offered me everything, Rosemary. You have offered me a family. You have offered me purpose. You have offered me something I never knew I was missing. Please do not call that nothing." Tears streamed down her face, but for the first time in 2 years, they were tears of joy. "I am afraid," she whispered. "I am afraid to hope again." Elijah lifted her hand to his lips and pressed a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "Then let me hope for both of us. Let me be brave enough for all 3 of us. Just give me a chance, Rosemary. That is all I ask." She looked into his eyes and saw the future she had stopped believing in. She saw summer mornings and winter nights. He saw Lily growing up with a father figure who would teach her to ride and read and believe in herself. She saw love, real and lasting and true. "Yes," she breathed. "Yes, Elijah." He smiled, and it was like the sun breaking through storm clouds. The next month was the happiest of Rosemary's life. Elijah proved himself to be a man of his word in every way. He worked from dawn until dusk, transforming the neglected cabin into a proper home. He taught Lily to ride on Ginger's back, holding her steady with patient hands. He read stories to her before bed, doing all the voices until she giggled herself to sleep. And every evening he sat with Rosemary on the porch, holding her hand, talking about dreams they had both thought were lost forever. But news travels fast in small towns, even to isolated cabins. One afternoon, a group of men from Silver Creek appeared at the edge of Rosemary's property. Their faces were hard, their intentions clear. "Heard there is a drifter staying here," the leader called out. "We do not want his kind associating with decent folk." Elijah stepped forward, positioning himself between the men and the cabin door. "I am no drifter. I am a working man who has found a home, and these are the most decent folk I have ever met." The leader spat on the ground. "This land is cursed. Everyone knows it. That woman and her daughter bring bad luck wherever they go. You would be wise to ride away while you still can." Elijah's jaw tightened. "I am going to say this once, and I suggest you listen carefully. Rosemary Wells is going to be my wife. Lily is going to be my daughter. This land is going to be my home. Anyone who wishes to dispute that can take it up with me personally. But I promise you, gentlemen, you will not enjoy the conversation." The men shifted uncomfortably. They had expected a stranger who would be easily intimidated. Instead, they found a man with steel in his spine and fire in his eyes. After a long moment, the leader grunted and turned his horse around. The others followed. Rosemary emerged from the cabin, her face pale. "Elijah, what if they come back?" He turned to her and took both her hands in his. "Then we will face them together. That is what families do." She looked up at him, her heart overflowing. "You called me your wife." "I did." He paused, suddenly nervous. "I know I should do this properly. I should court you and bring you flowers and ask for your father's blessing. But life out here is hard and short, and I do not want to waste another moment pretending I am not completely in love with you." Rosemary laughed through her tears. "Elijah Harding, are you proposing to me?" "I am trying to, but I appear to be making a mess of it." She threw her arms around his neck and held him tight. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." Behind them, Lily's voice rang out from the doorway. "Mama, does this mean Mr. Elijah is going to be my papa?" Rosemary pulled back just enough to look at her daughter. "It does, sweetheart. It truly does." Lily ran to them, and Elijah swept her up in his arms, holding her close as Rosemary leaned against his shoulder. standing there in the golden afternoon light, surrounded by the family he never knew he needed. Elijah felt something he had never felt before. He felt complete. They were married that spring, in a small ceremony beside the creek that ran behind the IR property. The minister came from 3 towns over, a kind old man who did not believe in curses or gossip. Lily served as flower girl, scattering wildflowers along the path with solemn concentration. As Elijah slipped the simple silver band onto Rosemary's finger, he whispered words that only she could hear. I spent my whole life searching for something I could not name, riding from town to town, ranch to ranch, never staying long enough to put down roots. I thought I was happy. I thought freedom meant having no ties, no responsibilities, no one waiting for me at the end of the day. He paused, his voice thick with emotion. I was wrong. Freedom is not about being alone. Freedom is finding the people worth staying for. And I have found them. I have found you. Rosemary's tears flowed freely now, but her smile was brighter than the sun. I love you, Elijah Harding. I love you, Rosemary Harding. As they shared their first kiss as husband and wife, Lily cheered and Ginger whinnied from her spot near the fence. Even the birds seemed to sing a little louder, as if nature itself was celebrating this union. That evening, as the 3 of them sat together watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink, Rosemary leaned her head against Elijah's shoulder. No one came near this cabin for 2 years, she said softly. They were afraid of a curse that did not exist. And then you came along and you changed everything. Elijah kissed the top of her head. I was just a lost cowboy looking for shelter. You were the one who invited me in. Lily, half asleep in her new father's lap, mumbled, not lost anymore. Elijah smiled down at her, his heart so full. He thought it might burst. No, sweetheart, he agreed. Not lost anymore. I am exactly where I am supposed to be. And as night fell over the cabin that the world had forgotten, a new chapter began. Not a chapter of curses or loneliness or fear, but a chapter of love, hope, and the kind of happiness that comes from finding home in the most unexpected places.